Now we're going to join now by Chris Elston. You may know him as Billboard Chris. He was here on Outsiders when he was last in Australia. Chris has just been up there. Chris is a fantastic campaigner against the insanity of transgenderism. He's done so much around the world to help shift that entire discussion. Huge success in America, Canada, here as well. Chris is here for reasons he'll tell us in a second, to do with basically his fight with the Australian government and e-safety commissioner and the censorship in Australia. But he was arrested in Brisbane, not charged, but arrested. Chris, welcome back to Outsiders. It's great to see you. Tell us why you're here briefly, and we'll play some of the footage as well. But tell us why you're here, and then tell us what happened in Brisbane.
Sure. So I came back to your beautiful country to sue your government in what is hopefully a landmark freedom of speech case, because about a year ago, I criticized the appointment of a woman named Teddy Cook. This is a trans activist woman who identifies as a man, who was appointed to the World Health Organization, tasked with drafting healthcare policy for trans-identified children and adults. This is a woman who posts pictures of bestiality, bondage, all sorts of very inappropriate things. She's not a medical doctor or health professional at all. She's just an activist. And I don't think she's the one who should be writing healthcare policy, especially for kids who are struggling with this transgender craze. So I criticized her. Your e-safety commissioner, or e-nanny as I call her, ordered my post taken down. I filed an appeal. Incredibly, Elon Musk then filed an appeal. So our appeals have been joined. They're two separate appeals, but it's all being heard as one case. So I'm going to be in court from Monday to Friday this week, fighting your e-safety commissioner to ensure that Australians have the right to see and say what they want on the internet.
Well, I'm glad you're fighting the case for the e-safety commissioner. Both parties, major parties, you know we're in an election campaign here, Chris. The Coalition as well as Labor support this Julie Inman Grant and her e-safety regime. It's quite insane. Rita?
It is, and I don't think the Australian taxpayer wants to be funding this defence on behalf of the e-safety commissioner, because we didn't ask for this sort of nanny policing of the internet. So, and she's already been embarrassed once in the courts with this fight with Elon Musk. Now, just with you go out there, you have a billboard with a clear message, and you engage in conversations with people, whether they agree with you or disagree with you. Tell us what happened in Queensland, where the police were harassing you, or saying you were disturbing the peace, you weren't entitled to be there. And all the footage I saw, and I looked at a fair bit of footage, you were just standing there. Some passers-by who were obviously activist types were abusing you, but you weren't responding, and yet you're the one that the police were worried about.
As usual. So yes, I was in Brisbane just for a day. I've been meeting with several politicians. I've been meeting several politicians all across the country, which is amazing because Canadian ones don't want to meet with me. So I'm thankful for that. But I just do what I always do. I found a busy spot. It was the public square on Queen Street. And I set up my tripod near a pole out of the way so no one will run into it. And I was just standing in the corner of this large square. And I wait quietly. If people want to approach and have a conversation, then I have one. And that's all I was doing. And then a council worker came along and he said I was obstructing people's movement and I had to leave. I disagree wholeheartedly with his statement. It's an outright lie. I wasn't obstructing anyone. So I refused to leave. He gave me an $806 ticket, still told me I had to leave. Again, I said no. 9 police officers showed up, and over the next hour, they were debating what to do with me. And eventually they took my signs off of me. Each one of them grabbed one of my arms and they marched me out of there.
I thought
I was going to jail.
Excuse me, Chris. Are you 9 police officers showed up for an hour? There's people who are having break-ins who've got their cars smashed up. They can't get any cops to show up. They have to go to the police station to make a report. You've got 9 police officers worried about you standing there wearing a billboard in a big public square? What is going on? We've got a coalition government in Queensland, do we not?
Chris?
But I'm having very dangerous conversations. I think that we shouldn't maim and sterilize children. So I can't be out there having that conversation. All of your parties go along with this. They need to stop me. But they've tried to stop me in the digital town square. Now they've tried to stop me in the physical town square in Brisbane. And just yesterday, again, I was ordered out of the town square in Melbourne. And again, I said no. So we cannot live in a society like this. Children are coming to harm. We need to be able to talk about it, but they're doing all they can to stop this conversation.
Well, so this is what I don't understand. I mean, Queenslanders are pretty sensible people. They've got a coalition government up there. I can understand this happening in Victoria, but Queensland, come on.
Excuse me.
What is it? Well, you know what I'm talking about, Rita. Come on. What is it that is the driving thing about what you're saying? Why is your message so threatening that the police instantly understand and have to react in such a way that, you're obstructing, but our 9 cops aren't obstructing the footpath? What is it about? I mean, seriously, think about how absurd this is. But why is this so triggering to establishment politicians? Why are they so scared of anybody saying, hey, this ain't a great situation and I want to raise awareness of it?
You're absolutely right. So here's the thing. The people support me wherever I go in the world, and I've been all over the world now. I was on the streets of Davos. They featured my sign on the big screen at the general session at the World Economic Forum. I was at the UN speaking at the Human Rights Council. But my bread and butter is talking to regular people on the street, and I get support from more than 90% of the population. But the far left scream bloody murder, and then that paralyzes the rest of the left who don't want to say anything, or else they're called a bigot. And the weakest ones of all are the politicians. But they need to stand up, because if you look at the statistics in the presidential election, for example, the number one issue that caused swing voters to go for the Republicans was this transgender insanity. Moms and dads know that their girls are girls and their boys are boys. They don't want boys and girls sports. And this is a winning issue for any politician who finds just the wee bit of courage that it takes to stand up and speak against it.
I agree wholeheartedly, and our coalition should. In fact, they're completely on the wrong side of the e-safety commissioner supporting her. You are the embodiment, literally, Chris, of the free speech argument. I want to play a clip of you. You engage with the public with humour. You crack jokes. You're never offensive. You get your message across. Here's a bloke who came up to you in Brisbane, and you had some very entertaining little comments under your breath. Have a listen.
Tanner, stage 2.
See, I've had a vasectomy done.
Oh, that's great.
And I chose, made an informed choice about that.
I'm really glad you did that, actually.
So I've sterilised myself.
That's good for society.
Of course it is.
Yeah,
and
in your case.
And a lot of cases of sort of, I don't know, false minorities.
That's good for society in your case. Very quick, Chris. Very nice. Very funny. But the point is, you do it so good-naturedly. You do it with humour. And isn't this the essence of free speech? Isn't this what the e-safety commissioner and all these laws against free speech don't understand? That you can have free speech, you can get your point across, you can do it with humour, but you always listen to the other side. And I think that's the embodiment of free speech, which is lost in all this. You don't need censorship laws, Chris.
No, we don't. There are laws against incitement of violence, and that's fine. We shouldn't be inciting violence, but we should be able to talk about anything. And we're talking about a situation where across the Western world, hundreds of thousands of children are coming to permanent harm. Why? Because they've fallen for this lie, teaching them that they're supposed to be something they're not. The only affirming thing about gender-affirming care, it's affirming self-hatred. Instead of telling children that they are beautiful just as they are, that there's no right or wrong way to be a girl or a boy, these kids who are gender nonconforming, who've had abuse, who've suffered sexual abuse, and who are on the autism spectrum, these are the vulnerable kids who are falling for this lie, and we need to be able to have discussions about it. So I'm going to keep doing it, no matter what all these mall cops try to do. I'll be back out there again this week, after trial each day, having conversations, because one conversation at a time, we're going to put a stop to this child abuse.
More power to you and your billboard. Billboard Chris, thanks so much for coming on Outsiders. Rita, we just wanted to quickly
I was just going to mention what he said about independent voters in the US. I've written about this. He was 100% right. The research they did and the polling they did post-election shows the number one issue for swing voters, for independent voters, wasn't inflation in the economy. It wasn't the border crisis, which is obviously huge. It was the trans-cultural issues.
And look how the coalition treated Catherine Deves at the last election, and why this isn't forefront in the election issue.
For Peter Dutton, it is such a massive opportunity here.
Absolutely.
This is the thing. There are all of these issues. It's not just this. This is one of them. There are plenty of issues out there that are what are called 80-20 issues,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
80% of people think this is totally common sense. 20%, say, are the hard left. those 20% drive the left policy, whether it's the Democrats or Labor, and you can absolutely get 80% of people saying, no, it's perfectly sensible that we, deport Venezuelan gang members, or, we don't allow children to have these life-saving, life-changing, life-altering procedures. It's just so straightforward.
Absolutely. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with lots more to chat about here on Outsiders. Back in a tick.